Did you put it on there? Just it's a third-party issue, but it has to do with the housing authority.
Okay, anything else? Councilor Stolberg?
I'll move the agenda with the addition.
We'll just note one item, councillors. You'll see that our policy that we reviewed at committee of the whole is not on the agenda. Administration had considered that it may be appropriate to advertise them online for public comment prior to bringing them forward for council approval. We can certainly change that direction if council sees fit, but we just thought we wouldn't rush and put them on this agenda just yet.
Was there how many policies?
We had 6, and most of them don't have substantive changes, but
I didn't think there was anything to them, but
I don't have an issue because they are online or on, but what would instigate this? Because we'd really, if we had a request, I could understand it, or if it was a request from council.
Mr. Chairman, I think policy is what we ask ourselves and staff to do, and bylaws are what we ask the general public to do. So I think policies are ours. This is ours, and I have no problem putting them forward. I don't really, because there is a difference between a policy and a bylaw. So
yeah, our public participation policy does suggest more engagement than less, but that's just we didn't want to throw it here in case that was something that would rush us.
Yeah, well, I think our agenda's pretty full as is. I'm not sure if we
fairly full.
But it is, we do have a lot of policies to get through, so it's just.
Yeah, so our thought process was you would see it. So for example, in committee of the whole on January, you saw six policies. You would see those back at council in March. And the February ones would be April, March ones would be June, right, or May. Just basically a month delay on when you bring them back to council, just in case there's any comments, because we do, I mean, policies don't often see the public until after they're approved, and we're kind of past the point where it's helpful to take input on it. So we just wanted to be a little bit more transparent and make sure that the public had that opportunity.
I have no problem with that being, they're not really time sensitive, and if it gives the public another opportunity to put their thoughts forward, I have no problem with waiting a month on it.
And neither do I, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't sure what we were thinking of, why we were postponing them, but that's fair with us.
And my only thought was, I thought council should have input on it before a change was made, so. Conversation prior to a change like that being made. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Any other additions to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Minute approval, regular council meetings minutes for January 10th, 2024. And then committee of the whole meeting minutes for January 26th, 2024. Councilor Gender?
Yes, please.
You'll move? Any
Mr. Gender?
On both of them together, by all means, separate.
No, I'm good with that.
questions, concerns? Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. No public hearings today. Our delegation, first delegation, 11 o'clock at Stettler Home Support. And then we have one 11:50 for Stettler District Ambulance Association. There is no council request for information. So new business, request for decision.
Mr. Chairman, before we go into new business, did you want to kind of mention what we're?
Oh, I guess with our day. Yeah, I guess with our day, it's not
just sitting here partying up.
It's not that we just everybody just we're wearing pink to honor no bullying or no violence or no just
No bullying day.
Yeah, the SCSS Be Kind campaign for the entire month is a pink campaign.
yeah. So that's why our council chambers and everybody wears a different shade of pink.
There you go.
Okay, 7.1 request for decision. Re-participation in promoting the heart of Alberta as a film. Page 7 of our package.
Chairman, I'd ask Nikki to speak to this one.
The town of Stettler contacted us in 2023, and in conjunction with the Stettler Board of Trade, they are looking at promoting our region for the filming industry as an economic development opportunity. They asked that we look at their materials that they were presenting to advertise on their website and to go out to the filming industry to promote our region. And so this idea was brought to a committee of the whole meeting in August of 2023, and we're bringing it back before you today for consideration.
Thank you. Questions on that? Council Stolberg?
I just think it's pretty good to pitch our area. I mean, there's been a lot of movies made not far from this area, just outside our area, and a few here too, but most of them are just outside our area, and it is quite a boom for the economy when they move in. And right at this present stage, County of Stettler can boost. We don't have like wind turbines and stuff in the background of our county, so they can film and it can look wherever they want it to look. And we have a lot of wide open spaces down in my area if they need that. And there's such a variety, and we have the Badlands and rivers, you name it. We have quite a variety of backgrounds for film. So I think it's a great idea to promote our region.
Council Bender?
I just noticed on page 13, when they say the hours of operation, there may be some movies that are shot beyond those. There might be some evening, nighttime, that sort of thing. There should be a contact saying, okay, should be some leniency in there.
We could add under special request or circumstance, the extended hours would be considered.
Mr.
Chairman, and from a economic development side of things, this is huge. I think we should be advertising the heck out of it. I agree 100% with Mr. Stolberg. We've had that conversation. The fact that we don't have a large number of wind towers and a large number of solar panels yet, per se, I think we have a great opportunity to protect our landscape for that future. And interesting enough, when the film industry rolls in, they are not bringing in tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of dollars, even for small films, because they do all the food, all the props, everything. It is a huge industry in Alberta, and it's getting bigger. We have a few guys that are promoting it just outside of Calgary, and it's getting to be, hopefully, will be maybe the next Hollywood for the film industry. I don't know if we want to be there, but Alberta's poised to be ready, set to go.
Council Stolberg?
I'd be prepared to make the motion that option one, that the County of Stettler joins our regional partners in promoting the County of Stettler as film friendly region.
Stephen, you had your hand up?
No, I was just gonna make a motion.
Any other questions?
Does that include the amendment for,
Yeah, Ernie's suggestion as well, of having they can apply for extension on hours.
Councilor Robert?
I want to talk, the extension on hours, because I was down there when they filmed the one in Rowleywood. And yeah, I was there all night. They kept drowning them with the water truck, kept drowning those people, and it made it rain and stuff. And that went on till, I think I got back here at 10 o'clock with that water truck. So that's a night scene and stuff. So I think your hours of operation, and I just, I know some of the films I filmed in Alberta are very, very good, and some aren't, I guess.
Okay.
I think they should be welcomed.
If there's no other questions, I'll call the question. You got you're ready? All in favor?
Voting.
Yeah. Okay, request for decision. Re 4-H Intermediate Excellence Award, Nikki, page 20 of the package.
Yes, it's that time of year. The County of Stettler has been supporter of the annual Stettler District 4-H Beef Council show and sale, where we have sponsored the Intermediate Excellence Award for several years now. That has included in the past years a monetary donation of $400 to cover the cost of the awards for that group of participants, and then the attendance of one of our council members, usually the designated area councilor for who's hosting the show at the event, to make the presentation. And we do make up a committee to do the interviews with the 4 nominees for the Intermediate Excellence Awards, and with council's attendance on the committee.
Thank you, Nikki. I did sit through the interviews once. It was quite impressive, the young people that came in and presented to us. Councillor Gender?
Okay. So the names, are they picked then, or who are they picked by? Who are the judges? Like, I don't want to see any bias in anything like that. I keep an open mind. So I'm just kind of wondering how's the process working.
Sure. So each club submits their nominee for the award. So that would be I believe it's the leaders of the club that choose the nominee for the club that's within that specific age group, the Intermediate Excellence age group, and they submit a name. So we get one nominee from each club that comes to us, and then we interview them. And it's always been a really tight race. It's really hard to choose. The kids are all excellent. So, but it's fun as well. So.
And public speaking, I think, is one of the real, like, there's a lot of important aspects 4-H brings to youth, but the public speaking and the ease of public speaking some of these young people portrayed, I think, is a key art. Communication is something we're losing sometimes. So I really enjoyed hearing the freshness and the ideas that.
And the criteria includes more than what they're doing with their 4-H projects. It includes what they do for the community and outside of 4-H. And it's overall choosing a pretty well-rounded type person that is not singly focused. It's more broadly focused on what they do. So it, community volunteering and everything, it all plays a part in the criteria.
So last year, this was funded through the
Rural Development Fund.
We have a motion? We don't have a motion.
I'll give you a motion for that.
Schnabberg will give us a motion. Any other questions? Stolberg?
I'd be willing to sit on the selection committee if there was room.
Which club is it, Erskine?
They haven't notified us who the hosting club is.
I was going to ask that question, but I haven't seen it either.
It will be Erskine hosting, so the Erskine counselor would present the award.
Yeah, and anytime.
How many do we need to have sit on the selection committee?
As many as would like to come. We try to schedule them usually between 2 mornings or afternoons. So
I'm game anytime for that myself.
And I will as well.
Anyone else? Everyone's nodding their head, so, yeah. they have a vote.
Any other questions? The motion on the table, I'll call the motion, all in favor, and that's carried. 7.3, requests for decision, Erskine streetlights. We have to light up the night in Erskine.
Mr. Chairman, so you saw this at Committee of the Whole as well. Council saw this back in, I think it was May of 2022. ATCO presented some options for upgrading the streetlights in Erskine to LED lights because the parts were no longer available for the existing setup we had there. So we, at that point, undertook one of the 3 areas that they had identified. And then at the same time, we also switched all of our lights over to a distribution rate that's a invested rate. So that comes with a little bit more buy-in from ATCO directly. So now when we look at this cost, it's, basically the project is a $60,000 project, but ATCO picks up 2/3 of that. And we're only responsible for basically 18,675 plus GST. I think we've got the total with GST in the motion here. So, yeah, we have the details in there. I believe there is a map on page 30 of your council package, which shows the 3 areas. And then each of the red light or red dots indicates, or red circles, I should say, indicates a new light. Black are the existing ones, and blue, the light blue ones, or actually I think they're darker blue in here, show where a new pole needs to be installed, I believe.
Counselor Stevens and Counselor Nyberg.
I'll move that we approve ATCO Electric's proposal as per staff recommendation 1.
Nyberg.
I just want to, Bet and myself and Tracy were in conversations about Area 2 having 2 new lights, and I don't see that in this proposal. I know we had talked about it, so.
So I think it's this red light is, I believe, one of the ones that was discussed. I thought the other one was an area that effectively came into this Area 3 as this other light.
Or is it 27886? Just straight up from that one.
I think one of the ones in question was actually an added one to Area 2, which would be 2786.
Yeah, I think.
Sort of
Right up
attached.
Okay, but I just, if you could slide over a little bit, and Area 2 to be completed project, it doesn't say add 2 new poles there. That's why I'm wondering why did they have to add poles, or were they attaching to existing poles? I'm trying to look at my email, sorry.
There was one pole in question that had a bunch of wires on it. I remember thinking that it needed to have a new pole, but they did to us that they could hang it on that pole.
Just as long as that's taken care of, because that was really the kind of the catalyst for us having this taking so long, so.
Yeah, so that was definitely considered here. I thought it was the one further south. We'll double check and follow up to make sure it's included in the pricing, but I do believe that was well covered.
Counselor Gender.
In the past, like we've done streetlights in Erskine before.
Just this, in recent history, just Area 2 in 20.
I think we've always done street lights.
Oh, yes.
We've always been in charge of the street lights. We're changing how we're doing it now.
Okay, I'm just looking at the funding. So where did we take the funding from back then? Then also on page, it's 20. Like they're just saying if it exceeds the cost, like there's no limit really saying it. Generally, like there will be a contingency, something like that.
Yeah, basically based on our experience, we're certainly not worried about that. And with the invested rate, basically we're paying a little bit more regularly, so that ATCO is taking care of more of the costs that we bore ourselves. Typically in the past, like we would be responsible for bulb changes and things down to that detail. And so now they're at that piece. But we do get refunds if it goes down. If the cost actually exceeded it, and we have been in this scenario before with utility providers when we've done like line moves and stuff, we've come back and they always come back for approval prior to going over budget, just like a contractor of our own would do. So I'm certainly not worried about a sudden bill of an extra $20,000 or something like that.
Thanks, Andrew.
Counselor Nyberg, you still?
I just wanted, I did get my email here, and it is that you're correct, Mr. Stevens, that is that 27607, and that's the one they're adding that extra pool to. Same, Mr. Clark said there's so many wires on it, but that's the one they are.
And it is spoken to in the verbal or in the written portion of the proposal. I was just trying to find exactly where it popped up, but that is the light.
Any other questions? I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, 7.4, request for decision, re-perk and Dirk application, page 31 of the package. Sharon?
Good morning. The province has two programs that allows the municipalities to recoup some of the uncollectible property taxes for oil and gas properties. And one is the provincial education requisition credit. The other one is the designated industrial requisition credit, and they go hand in hand with each other. We brought it before you to get a consent from you that we can apply for this particular application to the province. Our recommendation is that council directs administration to submit a PERC application for the provincial education requisition credit and the PERC and designated industrial requisition known as DIRC in the amount of $140,803. Or the council can defer the PERC application for future considerations. This was brought forward to the Committee of Whole on January 26th for discussion there.
Any questions on this? Councilor Gender?
I'm wondering, okay, this perk, was it the county that started throwing it? I guess it's
Involved in getting this process to recoup some of this. We were very involved with working with the province to see if we can recoup some of this school requisition, because otherwise we pay the requisition out, and if the companies are going to bankruptcy or defunct, we have no way of recouping any of that. And this is a program that we did work hard on to with the province to finally get.
The point I'm trying to make here is, okay, like there should be a hats off and a lot of acknowledgement back to administration. And it's one, like you say, James, did you know that what the county really does, and it's not just for our municipality, but it's just for the provincial as a whole. It's just hats off. Thank you.
And I think it was an advocacy issue for the councils at the time. We advocated hard, many minister meetings to try and explain what was happening. Once they figured it out, I think it was much better.
Yeah, certainly. Yvette and Sharon did a lot of legwork in making this happen for everyone. They were effectively the subject matter experts that the province leaned on to build this program.
Anytime that we get the County of Stettler administration to give you information, we usually get, you wanted this much and you get a binder this big. So hats off, absolutely.
Councilor Stolberg and then Councilor Grover.
And just because we are applying for reimbursement of education taxes on unpaid taxes, it doesn't mean that we can't collect those taxes in the future.
That does get back the taxes we paid on behalf of the companies that didn't. So it's a good thing for the county to tax their ratepayers, for sure.
Councilor Grover.
Yeah, that's just what I was going to say, but yeah, we're not forgiving any of the tax. That isn't, if there's somebody watching, I don't know. We're not going to give up on trying to collect the taxes from these questionable oil companies. We're going to keep trying to collect it. Thank you.
Councilor Gender.
I guess I'll make the motion for number one, that we do submit for the PERC application, please.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Stevens did step out because he had business dealings with some of the companies included. So I'll call the question. All in favor? And that would be carried. You can call Councilor second. Okay, 7.5. Review of enforcement order January 19th, 2024, James Marshall Trucking Limited, page 5.
And this is, just to be clear, this is page 5 of your additions package,
Additions package, okay.
which is has been available on our website since since it's been available to you guys on Monday night. So enforcement orders are a tool that the MGA gives us to require a person who's contravening a bylaw, an act, the MGA itself, under the stop order or the enforcement order, we can require them to do certain actions to either stop doing something, to change how they're doing something, or to start doing something in order to rectify the contravention. And then under that same section, or under the same division of the act, the people are given the right to request that council review the order, because those orders come administratively. They come from a designated officer. So now you get that back to you. And so this is the review of one such order that's been requested by the recipient of the enforcement order, and that's James Marshall Trucking. I'll generally refer to them as JMT as I go through the background here. So by way of some of the legislative background, I've just gone over the order and the review. And then, of course, the Act also authorizes us in the tax section to enact a community aggregate payment levy bylaw. So these bylaws are typically implemented in rural communities, and it's to charge a levy on sand and gravel that's removed from properties. It captures a effect of that industry on infrastructure and the costs, where the land assessment-based tax scheme doesn't really recover those costs. So there's a regulation as well under the MGA that's brought forward as part of the MGA, and it's the Community Aggregate Payment Levy Regulation. It applies to every municipality that's passed such a bylaw. It sets out certain requirements for the bylaw, and it includes that we have to set a uniform levy throughout the municipality. The regulation does list three to five, depending on how you look at it, classifications of shipments that are exempt from the uniform levy. It doesn't, contrary to some belief, it doesn't ever establish a type of person or a type of entity that is exempt from it, only the shipments themselves. So for example, based around public, like municipalities and Crown, not being charged the cap levy. But it doesn't say the Crown is exempt. It says shipments from the Crown to the Crown, or from the Crown to a municipality, are exempt. They still have to be reported. There's no requirement or no exemption from the requirement to report. And then so the different types of shipments that are exempt, and I consider the first three a little redundant. It's a shipment from a pit owned or leased by the Crown for use on a project that is being undertaken by or on behalf of the Crown. A shipment from a pit owned or leased by a municipality for a use or a project that is being undertaken by or on behalf of a municipality. And lastly, and I think this one covers the first two, and which is why I kind of call it a little redundant, but it's in the regulation this way. It's a shipment from a pit owned or leased by the Crown or a municipality for a use or a project that is being undertaken by or on behalf of the Crown or a municipality.
So if I could, I'm pretty clear on this. The only way that these shipments would be exempt is if the municipality or the Crown owned or leased the pit.
That's right. In these first,
And in none of the cases that we're dealing with, this is all owned by the private individual, private company, or even if we have no information that these were ever leased and hauled by a different individual.
that's right. And even hauling by the Crown, for example, itself doesn't qualify. The pit itself must be owned or leased. We typically interpret that to mean that there's a substantial amount of control and that the Crown or the municipality would be the operator. And to just put that into perspective as well, in projects where we end up buying gravel, which is sometimes necessary to fulfill grant obligations, that we can't claim our own gravel, but we can claim if we buy it through the grant, we still have to pay the cap levy on that. So
explain that, say that again. I just want to reiterate.
So if we buy from a private operator, even though we're a municipality, even though we're the one levying the charge, those shipments
on our road,
those shipments still are charged the cap levy payment. And in reverse as well, if we sell gravel, and we don't typically do it, but Starland does out of a pit in our area, when they sell gravel on their farmer days, those shipments are subject to the cap levy bylaw because they're not for the back half of that, for a municipal project. Even though the municipality is selling it, the second half isn't satisfied.
So there's a very, very narrow window that any of these are exempt.
Under those four, or sorry, those first three conditions, yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Well, Andrew got it with his clarification.
And then the next two exemptions, if the shipment of sand or gravel is subject to another tax, levy, or payment that's established by and payable to the municipality, then it would be exempt. In our case, we have no other taxes, levies, or payments that we charge against shipments. And the shipments distinction is important here. So things like the application fee or the inspection fee you pay for a heavy haul permit or a road use agreement, those aren't charges against the shipments, nor are your property taxes charges against the shipments. Those aren't calculated as part of your assessment. The quantities of gravel aren't considered. Therefore, it's not against the shipment themselves. And then lastly, and this can come up a lot more often, this is probably the most common exemption we would see outside of our municipal and crown partners, shipments of gravel that you have to do because of a road use agreement or in the legislation is referred to as a road haul agreement or a development agreement for the construction, repair, and maintenance of roads that are identified in that agreement for providing access to the pit. Those shipments are exempt. So if my road use agreement says that I have to maintain this road, and at a certain point we say, okay, yeah, no, you need to put some gravel on that road. The gravel you put on that road is exempt from the cap levy. Generally, we would expect that if that was the case and we identified and there was a public road under your road use agreement that needed gravel, we would be giving the direction that it required the gravel because you wouldn't otherwise have authorization to dump materials on our roads unless it's explicitly authorized by operations. Is there any more questions on the background of the exemptions? I will go into the details a little bit more about how the current order applies to this, but just want to give the full background for
Mr. Stevens and Councilor Grover.
Yeah, you said it is regulated. So is this MGA, what regulation does this cap levy?
Yeah. So there is a community aggregate payment levy regulation that is enacted or enabled by the Municipal Government Act. And similarly, the bylaw that I'll talk about next is also explicitly authorized under the Act, the MGA, and then the community aggregate payment levy regulation applies to municipalities that have enacted such a bylaw.
Just with that though, what can that be used on? Like the cap levy is when you talk back to the Act?
Yeah, so the Act specifies that it can be used for, and I do have at page, I do have some excerpts from the MGA at page 64. Maybe I'll just go straight there to quote from it. Yeah, so 409.1 sub 2, a community aggregate payment levy by law authorizes the council to impose a levy in respect of all sand and gravel businesses operating in the municipality to raise revenue to be used toward the payment of infrastructure and other costs in the municipality. So typically I would interpret that while it does put an emphasis on infrastructure, it's not limited to infrastructure, but I would liberally interpret it that other costs in the municipality would require that there be a geographic limit to it, that if we're, paying for things for, lobbying efforts in Edmonton kind of thing, that wouldn't necessarily be another cost in the municipality. But I don't believe that's been tested in court, to be honest.
Cap levy's cap levy. But road use agreement, even if the provincial government, they did 590 there last year, they have a subcontractor come in, they have to follow our road use agreements. Everybody that uses our road like that has to follow our road.
Yeah, that's the general traffic bylaw that you've established.
Not hauling out of where they hauled out of a different county into our county. They have to have a road use agreement and that road has to be fixed when they leave.
Yeah, once they get on our roads, on the highways, we don't have jurisdiction, but if they're using our roads.
Just so the public knows that. Thank you.
I will go a little bit. So our bylaw, of course, reflects all of this. So we require operators specifically within the county to report and pay on the total sand and gravel shipped from pits. We require that quarterly. The Act and the regulation together give us the option to do either monthly or quarterly to reduce the amount of paperwork we do it quarterly. Then the levy is calculated on those shipments that are reported. There is a maximum rate, and that is what council elected to utilize, which is 40 cents per ton of sand and gravel. The invoice, we generate an invoice, or otherwise known as levy notice, and we require that payment within 30 days through the bylaw. So the cap bylaw, as I'll refer to it, it reflects the exemptions of the regulation. So we basically just tried to mirror exactly the same thing. We did discover in 2023 a typo as part of another appeal hearing, which at the time it read a shipment from a pit owner or leased by the Crown or municipality for use or project that is being undertaken by or on behalf of the Crown or municipality as part of the exemption. So this was listing the exemption. So instead of saying a pit owned or leased by the Crown or municipality, it said pit owner or leased by. It doesn't quite make as much grammatical sense in that respect, but council did clarify and amended the bylaw to correct the error. In doing so, they clarified their intent was that that section should align with the regulation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little further on. But I will point out that the form in the bylaw for operators of sand and gravel pits to report shipments, so that form is set by bylaw. It's a schedule to the bylaw. It is quite succinct in its reference in listing shipments or exemptions to shipments, that is specifically sand and gravel to the government of Alberta or a municipality, only being exempt when that pit is owned or leased by the Crown or a municipality. So with this specific example, the enforcement order that was issued on January 19th required James Marshall Trucking to cease shipping of sand and gravel immediately from the Southeast 36-34-21 and to pay $9,921.32 in outstanding charges by February 9th, 2024. So the intent of those two orders was A, to stop any further delinquency from occurring. So things aren't being paid. We don't want to keep racking up the bill. And then to pay everything at that time that was greater than 30 days outstanding. So it was no longer current charges. And that included a variety of invoices and finance charges, which you can see later in the package. I won't explicitly go through them, but you have had an opportunity to review. So backing up even before the enforcement order, in 2023, you'll see this referenced in JMT's letter requesting this review. A stop order was issued to JMT. They had not reported on any shipments for 5 quarters of the year, so over a year and a bit, a year and a quarter basically. So that was July 1st, 2021 to a period ending September 30th, 2022. So on January 4th, and that should say 2023, my apologies there, James Marshall Trucking provided the missing reports after the stop order had been issued. But 2 of the reports claimed exemptions under a field labeled total sand and gravel shipped from this pit to the government of Alberta or a municipality. And in brackets, it says applicable only if the pit is owned or leased by the Crown or a municipality. So, and that emphasis was added by myself. You can see that that's referring to what I just mentioned about the succinct reference to the intent. So neither the reports that were submitted nor the tax roll itself contain any substantiation to support that the pit and the lands we're discussing were owned or leased by the Crown or a municipality. Additionally, the JMT total exemptions on some of those reports didn't actually mathematically add up, and I'll flip down the table and that I'll go through a little bit more and flip back and forth a little bit between that and the reports just to show you what I'm discussing there. So as a result of those 2 points, the exemptions without any substantiation of it being a Crown or municipal pit and the mathematical errors, we requested that the reports be resubmitted and corrected and did not revoke the stop order. So at that time, the applicants here appealed the stop order to the Land and Property Rights Tribunal. That panel issued a decision which did revoke the stop order, and a copy of that's attached in case you want to review the entire thing. That decision considered only whether the reports submitted satisfied the requirements of the stop order and or the development permit. The LPRT didn't have the authority to determine whether the amounts were exempt. That's not within their scope. Their scope is to rule on decisions of the development authority. Whether those amounts are exempt or not was not a decision of the development authority. And they didn't try to assert that they were making a ruling on it. They simply made a decision that the reporting of the amounts satisfied the development authority's direction in the development permit and the stop order. This LPRT actually did specifically conclude that the county had other enforcement mechanisms through the cap levy bylaw, and that we could correct the tonnage rule under those enforcements. The LPRT did claim that the regulation does not prohibit the county from establishing exemptions beyond those defined in the regulation. And so the implication of that is saying, well, the typo could have not been a typo and could have expanded, legitimately expanded the exemptions that were applicable. Now, it is beyond the scope and the jurisdiction of the LPRT to consider that, and they didn't actually hear arguments on this point. There were no submissions made back or forth. The regulation does establish that the levy must be uniform. It would not be uniform if we could establish extra classes outside of the regulation that were exempt. For example, we cannot establish an exemption to say that shipments of sand and gravel hauled from the Buffalo Lake area are exempt, right? It has to be uniform, and it must apply to all sand and gravel operators. So the exemptions in section 6 are really the only deviation from that.
Yeah. So just in further clarification to what you just said, so the county actually couldn't exempt a private contractor if he was supplying to a municipality or the province under this act, because that wouldn't.
That's a good point. We couldn't go in and say, hey, if you're selling us gravel, that's okay. You don't have to pay the tax. You charge us for the tax and then pay it back to us, which is a roundabout way of doing it, but it keeps the transparency and keeps the accuracy there.
If the LPRT said we could establish new exemptions, but further to your point, that exemption would have to apply to everyone, every operator from every region to maintain that fair and balanced playing field. I don't think it allows for singular exceptions.
Yeah, it's our position that even a genuine intent to establish additional exemptions under the act, including what would be implied by the typo that the JMT has advanced here, would be beyond the authority of council. It would be ultra vires is the Latin term that you'll see used in municipal decisions. And so that would fall into a part where that section of the bylaw upon competent review would be judicially severed from the rest of the bylaw. And then lastly, in their decision, the LPRT didn't give a whole lot of reason as to why it dismissed the totals that didn't add up. They made an indication that JMT experienced difficulty reconciling the amounts because of the difference in wording between the schedule and the rest of the bylaw. However, JMT did attempt to claim additional exemptions, which were not subject to the dispute about that typo section. The only indication on these other shipments was a notation that said road use. And, as we established before, any sort of gravel hauled under a road use agreement to the roads that are affected would typically be governed by us, and the amounts don't make sense to have demonstrated that, nor has JMT tried to substantiate that. So while we've never gotten clarity on what that notation meant, we don't have any reason to believe that it is actually the section that would be applicable under a road haul agreement. So I'm just actually going to page down a little bit to yeah, that would have been elsewhere, I believe. Okay. I am going to go on to the report first. My apologies. So after that LPRT decision was rendered, And the intent was effectively established. It was argued by the appellant and given some credibility by the LPRT that we should just go in and correct it. If there's an issue with it, we need to deal with it. So we did apply invoices based on the totals calculated with the exemptions that we could substantiate, which there were none. So the full amounts reported were invoiced. These remained unpaid, so that would have been in about March, late March of 2023. These remained unpaid, and there was and effectively uncontested until December of 2023. We had submitted to them a letter in May of 2023 giving them direction on why those amounts are applicable, which is largely what we're discussing today, that those exemptions didn't apply, no exemptions under the road use agreement applied. We simply just didn't have any information to substantiate them, nor did it seem to make a logical conclusion. So in an email in January of 2024, GMT had indicated that their position did remain that certain shipments from Q3 2021 and Q4 2021 and Q2 of 2022 should be subject to exemptions, and that the interest and penalties as a result of those going unpaid should be waived as well. And then they did follow that up with issuing payments for what they believed was owing, and did not issue payments for the remaining amount. So the exemptions did actually, so in this email, a representative from JMT did establish what they felt was applicable, what they thought each invoice should have listed for each quarter. This actually changed the amounts that they were claiming from the initial reports. And I'll go through each of these reports. So I did indicate there were 5 reports that were submitted or that they were delinquent on. One of those reports is not in this table because it indicated that during that period, no gravel was hauled. So there's no exemptions to dispute here. So we're not disputing that record at all. So in Q3 of 2021, you can see the A, B, C, D, and E are listed here. And that reflects what we see in the bylaw schedule itself. And I'll just show you what this form looks like. So this is what the form looked like at the time. So it gives instructions, separate report for each pit. You need to submit them for the last reporting day in these periods, and they should be legible and accurate. So we just asked for the pit location, the operator, contact information if they want to be contacted by email, and then the landowner information. Actually, sorry, this is the 2023 version, but it's, yeah, no, I should find that one. Sorry. Let me just back up a little bit here. So this is the 2021 version that was applicable at the time. Oh, actually, I think my confusion here is they were reporting on forms that were from an even older bylaw, but it was still clear on them. Let me bring that up. So this shows an example of one of the quarterly reports. So you can see here under the tonnage bar, we've got the A, B, C, D, and E that we were talking about. So in A, you report the total amount of gravel that's hauled. So in this quarter, it was listed as $17,249.75. B and C, you list your exemptions. So in B, we've got those ones that are for public projects. So this is what we would expect Starland when they're hauling from their pits to fill out that, this is the amount that we use for municipal purposes that came out of our municipal pit. And then C is the amount that's shipped from the pit for the construction, repair, and maintenance of access roads in accordance with the road use agreement or development agreement. And the very last, that exemption for shipments that have already paid a levy, tax, or fee, we don't put it on our schedule because we have no instances where it's applicable. So we don't even put it on there. So we expect then that the total exemptions are just B and C added up. and that E is the result of taking the exemptions away from the total, which would be A. In this case, you can see 13,288 claimed as a Crown or municipal project, nothing claimed under the road use agreements, and then a amount that differs from the exempted amount, 13,425, with a notation road use. So
Councilor Stevens? Do you mind putting up that last attachment? So is this the earliest version of this form that we had? Was there any earlier? Because I'm just, when you look at B, applicable only if the pit is owned or leased by the Crown or municipality. I just want to make sure that there was no earlier versions that didn't have that reference.
I would have to review that. I'm not certain. I can confirm that these reports, each of the reports at question in this enforcement order that have amounts outstanding, contain that notation.
Good.
Okay. Just back all the way back up. Okay, let's just that. Okay, so you'll see that that same information is reproduced here for each of the reports, and that shows you the differences. So in this case, in that first one, there is a difference of 137.26 tons of gravel or sand that are claimed to have been exempted, but not claimed under a Crown or municipal exemption, or what I call an obligation exemption, which is that road use agreement or development agreement requirement. So we have no understanding of what that amount is. In the January 2nd, 2024 email, JMT claimed that only the net aggregate that had originally been reported should be owing. So again, they're still claiming this $137.26 should be owing.
Excuse me, Andrew, is that dollars or is that ton?
Right. Yeah, that's ton, not dollars. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, these are all in tons. These are the unit quantities because that's what the reporting is all based on. And then if you move over back in Q4 of 2021, the report they submitted on behalf of that quarter listed a total $6,700 tons of gravel. That just under 4,000 of that was a Crown or municipal exemption, but all of it was exempt. So that they claimed that there were $0 owing at that time. In the January 2nd email, the JMT represented that there was 2,750 tons of gravel owing. So that's where I referred earlier to differences between the original reports and the quantities in this email. So they're claiming they do have an amount that they owe on, that they have paid based on, but that they're still saying they don't owe on that for 4,000 tons worth.
Councilor Gender?
Look at Q3 and Q4 on there, like the way you did the math on the first one, I can kind of follow through with the net, but then on the second one, it's totally the opposite.
So in the first one, they continued to claim the exemptions that weren't in the itemized amounts is what I'll call it. So they claimed the full total of what they had put down under the total exemptions, not the amounts that added up or should have added up to that total exemption. In Q4, they stopped trying to claim that amount, the difference amount, with that road use agreement notation. We similarly have in Q2 of 2022, in this case, they didn't claim any of their exemptions as Crown or municipal exemptions and didn't claim any of their obligation or any of their exemptions as obligation exemptions, but still listed a total of 3,964 tons of gravel that were exempt and therefore believe they only owed on 1,685 tons of gravel, and that they repeated that number in the January 2nd, 2024 email. So they didn't list why they had exemptions, they just listed, here is the total exemption. And then lastly, Q3, they did something similar. The total was 18,923 tons. They claimed that all of that was exempt, but didn't indicate that they were Crown or municipal exemptions or those obligation exemptions, and therefore that they owed on nothing. But then in the January 2nd email, they didn't actually dispute the invoiced amount on that. So I've left this in as that they did agree that they owed on that. So I put this table here to show you that there's not a lot of consistency to what we've seen, even within these 5 reports that were submitted together. There's changes from what was initially reported to what's being claimed to be reported now, but we have not received any substantiation or explanation as to why those changes occurred or what the extra exemptions are claimed to be. And then, of course, as we discussed fairly extensively before, this pit would not be subject to a Crown or municipal exemption because the pit is not owned by the Crown or a municipality, and we have no records showing that it is leased by the Crown or a municipality.
Councilman Emery?
So just to be clear, at no point in time has JMT given us any information or evidence that any of their pits are owned or leased by either a municipality, a provincial or federal government.
That's correct. And
Not, like, they haven't even inferred it, they've just said we're exempt.
Yeah.
So they haven't even inferred that they have leased these pits out.
no,
Sold the pit.
no claim has been made that I am aware of. And further, I would also expect, now this isn't a hard and fast rule or anything, but typically when the Crown owns or leases the pit, always when they own it, and typically when they lease it or a municipality leases it, we see that entity reporting it to show that they're the operator, because if they're leasing it, they should have substantial control. And that would qualify them as the operator and the cap regulation, and they're responsible for providing us with who they are, who's operating it, and providing those shipment levies. So there could absolutely be exceptions to that, but I would expect that that would be substantiated, that we would see some documentation to demonstrate that, an authorization by, say, the municipality that says, yeah, no, this is our pit. These projects are going out, but we contracted a guy to crush it and haul it. So they're going to do the work. They'll do the reporting, but they're doing it on our behalf, and those are going to municipal projects.
Another question, Jim?
So this has been going on since 2021 to now 2024. We're getting into the latter half or the middle half of 2024. We've been back and forth with this individual, back and forth. Have we put a stop work order on a cap levy issue on this particular individual, on the cap levy situation, on any of this stuff before?
We did, and that was in the 2023, January 2nd of 2023, we issued a stop order against the pit. That is what got the operator to bring in the reports that we're discussing today. Prior to that, we actually didn't even have the report. So we issued the stop order on that basis and compelled through that stop order that he provide the reports. As I mentioned earlier, we weren't satisfied that they were accurate and had refused to remove the stop order on that basis until they resubmitted it in a way that's either substantiated the exemptions they were claiming or removed the exemptions they were claiming, because we didn't believe and they didn't contradict us in the case that the pits weren't owned or leased by a Crown or municipality.
So that's the stop work order we're dealing with today.
So that was the stop. No, that was the stop work order that the LPRT then heard an appeal of and revoked that stop order on the basis that the bylaw, or pardon me, the permit and the stop order required them to report on the shipments and that the accuracy of those shipments could be further explored through the cap levy bylaw.
So it took us 3 years to get to this point, basically, not 4.
Yeah, effectively. So yeah, the early.
We have tried multiple times to discuss and deal with this issue over and over again. So, Mr. Chair, if you would, I
have just the tiniest bit more to summarize. So the last bit is January 2nd of 2024. The CAO replied to JMT after that email from their representative claiming these were the amounts they believe they owed, and reiterated the position that we had sent them back in May of 2023, included that letter again, and we demonstrated that the amounts that were remaining were on their statement and on their account. And once we got no response on that, that's when the CAO issued an enforcement order pursuant to Section 545. And that is what is at review today.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think we've been more than fair and reasonable in dealing with this. We've tried to work with this individual to the point that it gets to that where you just have to say, I'm sorry, we need to move on. And I'm willing to say that the county administration did their job and did due diligence. 3 years or almost 4 years of dealing with this. They are been more than fair and more than reasonable, in my opinion. So I make the motion that the County of Stettler uphold the January 19th, 2024 enforcement order against James Marshall Trucking, having given regard to the requirements established in the community aggregate payment levy regulation and finding exemptions claimed were not applicable. There's nowhere in this that he has given us any information or give staff any information. Give us a lease that it's leased by a municipality, give us a lease that it's by the province, or that we're done. But not once has he done that. Those are the rules. It's pretty straight, clearly laid out, so I'm good with this.
Councillor Stevens?
I would like to add to that we're required that we cannot vote in contravention of the MGA. And the MGA states that the cap levy must be applied uniformly. And if we were to give a singular entity amongst multiple exemptions, I think we would be in contravention of the MGA by doing so. I would also like to point out that even on the forms, when they're filling out the quantity amounts, all of them clearly noted that in order for any exemption, it must be owned or leased by a crown or municipality. So even on the form indicating the volumes, the notation was even ignored there. So I would add those points that it removes any ambiguity.
Councillor Gender?
Just looking on page 9 where it says pursuant to section 553 of the municipal code, costs and expenses incurred by the county of Stettler may be added to the tax roll. It'd be interesting to see like what costs that we have incurred up to the point here. And I would just soon say it not may, that they shall be.
That's another discussion.
That's another discussion. I think administration can bring that back and we should look at that. But I agree with you. The cost of dealing with enforcement in the county of Stettler has, if people would just do what they are asked to do, we wouldn't have to spend so much money on lawyers.
That's the world.
That is the world we live in, absolutely.
Okay. So to move forward, you need to accept this as information because
I made a motion.
that motion to carry forward with this, okay?
Yeah, so, just
On that, Councillor Grover?
I like to talk to it, yeah. I think if our billing has been correct and he owes us that much cap levy, then he has to pay that cap levy. And yeah, we are not going to probably recoup much of our legal on it, but we might not. But at the end of the day, the other operators pay theirs, so yeah, this outfit will have to pay theirs. And I'd like to see them pay it, go back in the pit, make lots of money, and carry on. Thank you.
Any other questions or I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, we're just a bit past our 11 o'clock and our delegate is here. Stettler Home support and up to the podium. And then we'll do introductions. Please. Okay, we'll start with Michelle.
For legislative assistant.
Ernie Gender, Stettler Ward. Paul McCade, Denali Red Willow Ward.
Larry Clark, Botha Gadsby, Reeve.
Gabe Grover, Big Valley Councilor.
Justin Stevens, good morning.
Hi, Terry. Les Stolberg, Weimar Indian.
Terry James, Erskine South Warden.
Nikki Thorstensen, Communications.
Andrew Bishop, Director of Municipal Services.
I'm Terry Visser. I'm from the Home Support Program. I'm the program coordinator. Today we are asking for $4,820 to subsidize our travel mileage expenses out into the county that our clients that we serve out into the county. Home Support operates on a fee-for-service using a sliding base scale for low-income clients. So on average, we travel per year 7,000 kilometers annually, and we pay the aides at 50 cents per kilometer, and we have 60 hours at $22 paid per hour for travel time to our Home Support aid staff. We have 4 aides out of 7 that currently serve the county. The aides have on average 3 county clients each month, and their average appointment time is 2.5 hours. For our county clients, we provide house cleaning, laundry, meal preparation, health emergency line, hand and foot nail care. We ensure all of our residents, whether you're town or county, have access to food. So Meals on Wheels volunteers do not deliver out into the county unless they're right in close proximity. But we would make arrangements with a Home Support aide to deliver a meal if that is required. Or we will shop for groceries for them and deliver them out there. And even if they're very low income and needing a food hamper from the food bank, we will ensure that they get that as well. So no matter what, we make sure that all of our residents, whether town or county, have access to food. Services provide social contact. So having someone show up regularly is a peace of mind for the family, knowing somebody will check up on their family. FCSS annually grants us core operating expenses. These include program support, staff and training, and mentoring volunteer and AHS aides for housekeeping, laundry, health emergency line services. Meals on Wheels services are supported by Super Flutie, and the FCSS mandate grants only the purchase of meal carriers for our program. Casino funds and community donations fund our nail care service. Examples of our services are house cleaning is usually every 2 weeks, 2 to 3 hour appointments. We also have clients that they'll have AHS come in and assist them with medical needs, but they require additional assistance. We would come in to assist them with their non-medical needs, such as toileting, additional bathing, and dressing. Aides would also do laundry, house cleaning, and garbage disposal of incontinence products. The typical appointment is 1.5 hours, 3 or more times a week. Hand and foot nail care, Home Support technicians would come to the client's home and provide basic nail trimming and filing. So that's what we do. We like to spread kindness throughout our community and just help those that are in need. So I would thank you for letting me tell you a little bit about Home Support.
Are you willing for any questions, if there's any questions?
Yes, absolutely.
Any questions? Councilor Stillberg?
Yeah, thanks for presenting that, Terry. I think it's great that our council understands the role of Home Support within the county. And as far as in the county's position, it's nice that we can keep these residents in our county longer with your support. And you had mentioned you get funding from FCSS, but that of course cannot be used for transportation. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct. They'll only cover core fundamentals of the program. So that is salary for the program coordinator to coordinate the services. So the rest is a fee for service. We do charge for our services. We try to keep it as minimal as we possibly can by asking our community for donations and grant opportunities. So like I says, it's based on income level. So every situation is assessed, not only for income, but the situation as well. So if I see something that needs more addressed, I will right away refer that person to other programs within the community to make sure that that person has access to all the services that we provide.
That is a good extra service. And you do notice change in the clients that you, if red flags are raised, you can notify the family and things if they're.
Yeah, for sure. And we're seeing more and more, like our population is aging, and we are seeing more and more requests all the time. And, you know, various income levels like that, like last year, we did well over 6,500 kilometers, but of course we didn't subsidize all that needed, only those ones that needed that subsidization.
Councilor Stevens?
I've overheard part of this when you were discussing with some of your volunteers. The nature of who you assist puts a lot of them at high risk. Is your volunteers and staff, are they trained or given any instructions as to what to do if there is red flags or they do happen upon a more urgent situation?
Yeah, you bet. The in-house aides, they do get training for sure. We do in-house training. We do a lot with elder abuse care because that we do see that, unfortunately. And we do work with other like social programs within the community, and they will come in and train us as well on things that they cover. For the volunteers, I go to each group and do a presentation, and I send out communications to their delivery coordinators so that they know exactly how to handle a delivery, you know, problem, for sure.
Councilor Stolberg?
I think this service is awesome to have in our county, that is being delivered by home support. So I'm prepared to make a motion that the county support home support with the request of $4,820 and that it come from our rural development fund to support your program.
Us?
So, good. Terry, just what if this doesn't go through? What happens, right?
Well, we'll keep trying. We always keep trying. We'll write grants. We will ask the community for donations, for sure. It does strap us, and we will have to, if we, you know, put the cost towards our residents.
Terry, I have a question for you. It's you did mention low income and then you mentioned non-subsidized services. So for our elderly people that are staying rural or staying on, you know, in our hamlets or on farms, there is an opportunity too, if they get to the point where they can't provide some of those services to themselves, that they can do this, but it comes at an extra cost.
Yeah, it does. Like, you know, I would go out and assess the situation. And again, depending on their income level, I would subsidize if they would meet our financial requirements. And yeah, we would always make sure that they were never left without some sort of care.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Stevens?
Separate from this immediate discussion, I would like to put it on the committee of the whole, how we track some of our rural development or economic development in our reporting, because I think some of these activities aren't necessarily tracked in the way that shows what we're doing from a rural development or economic development. So I would like that topic added to a upcoming committee of the whole.
Yeah, if I can actually just give some thoughts on where our funding policies are going. So we had direction.
Can I stop you, Andrew?
Okay, yeah, sorry.
We have a motion, and I don't want to get Terry involved in our interworking. As much as I'd love to have you here, I know you're a very busy lady. We can have that conversation.
Mr. Grover, did you have something on this one?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I looked into this when I had cancer. I come home, couldn't really operate. It was gonna cost way too much. I've been better to hire a nanny to come in and look after me. Does this money not kind of come from FCSS? We have two board members there.
Not the mileage board.
They'll only cover our core operating costs. So they only cover the program coordinator to mentor the volunteers and train the staff. But the rest is a fee for service.
If I may clarify that, the FCSS mandate is really clear on funding has to be of a preventative nature. So if it's not considered preventative, FCS cannot fund it no matter how good they think the project is and how much it's needed. Their mandate does not allow them to fund anything that's not of a preventative nature.
You're just too rich, Mr. Grover. That's the problem.
If I would have fell and broke a hip, then I would have been a real burden on
Healthcare, though, this is that overextension.
then. But I still think, and I do believe in my heart of hearts that FCSS should, I don't care.
This is FCSS fault like that.
I think they should too. Let's change the mandate.
Please.
From the government, and you guys should look after.
Oh, we're trying hard. We're trying hard. We advocate on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have a motion on the table. Yeah, Terry, and I thank you for your presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Guys.
Okay, now Andrew.
Yeah. So
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I just.
that's perfectly appropriate because it's good form a second motion. So just to give you guys some ideas, council had given us direction to bring back the CIP policy to consider more annualized requests. We started digging into it, and we're kind of two minds right now that we could bring back the CIP policy like that, but it does significantly change the framework of it because it was intended to be sort of that startup, get people going one. Or alternatively, we could set aside and make a new policy and a new program that specifically covers the annuals that we quite regularly see, like the festival, the home support, and many of those are currently funded from the Rural Development Fund. But this could potentially catch those things and then just basically it gets them in the budget every year.
I was hoping to make it a little bit more broader in our accounting.
Yes, and then the reporting side can come out of that policy. Of course, I care about the policy, the communication side, it gets to be Nikki's.
Well,
Yeah,
recently we discussed railway and taxation, and if we're going to provide some tax breaks to a very large tourism, this is a net economic stimulus to our broader community, but we never report it as such. So I'd like to have kind of a separate reporting mechanism for those activities. And if we're going to invest in healthcare, whether it be some home support or doctor recruitment, I would say if we're doing this out of the basis that without maintaining a minimum level of healthcare service, we will have a declining population and declining economy, I think that should be reported.
yeah. So for the reporting side of it, we could start anytime because we do, Krista does reconcile those transfers each year as part of the audit. So we could, potentially get it into a format that we're more regularly able to articulate as part of our economic development platform and the ways that we sustain our community, which is an economic driver. So yeah, we can definitely move in that direction.
Councilor Nyberg?
Getting back to what Mr. Gender said, that did you know? This is getting to be a bucket full of did you knows, but that would be absolutely down that, Mr. Stevens. I agree with you. We should be letting the ratepayers of the county Stettler know how many dollars that we're spending on certain items. We make a motion for, 2,000 here, 4,000 there, but when you look at it at the end of the year, we're putting a lot of money back into the community to help bolster those small hauls, those operations like this to keep the well-being of our ratepayers good. And I think it's important that we got to tell people, did you know that we did this? Lots of people won't, but so I agree. So do you need a motion or just instruction to put that on the, for discussion at committee of the whole?
Yeah, receive from, receive for information would be fine, or direction to bring forward.
Direction to add that to the next committee of the whole, Mr. Chairman.
Call the question, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, our next one is at 11:50. Next delegation. We've got Krista, Craig, Sharon, Krista, Craig.
I have let Kristen know to try and make her way in to discuss the next item of it.
So I guess, do we jump to Chief Administrative Officer's report until we're?
We could just do 8.1. It's just an update.
8.1, Sharon's, I had Sharon beside it, but.
Yeah, it is a Sharon thing, but it's really just an update on it.
8.1, that is water connection update, page 115.
So we just wanted to bring back for information. We had the water connection up near the lake that would have required 2 connections. We brought it back to council. You approved a $46,000 cost, but there was a request to get quotes. And then some of the discussion that ensued, we weren't 100% sure if you wanted to see it back in front of you or not. Based on the motion that was filed, we figured that bringing it forward as a memo just to give you the background so that you can see roughly where we're at with the quoting that we received.
Any questions on that? Councilor Gender?
I guess the part that gets me on this one here, about 5 years ago, was about $10,000. We were able to cover the costs for the installation, and we bump it up to 15. It just seems like everyone just kind of keeps on, every time you bump it up, that money goes out of it.
If I can speak to that one. So the 10 and the 15 that we typically say is covered and it's kind of a wash, that is just for the meter vaults. In this case, we had that 250 meters of pipe, and that's where the balance of the cost effectively comes from. So in this case, there's 2 meter vaults of 30,000, and then so the balance is really where's is really just that small section of pipe.
I find on 250 meters of pipe in order to threshold drilling, you're running about $40 a meter. I find it's expanded a little bit on the higher side on there, in my opinion.
Councilor Nyberg?
All due respect, Mr. Gender, I don't know if you filled up with diesel fuel 10 years ago and now today. I'm not sure if anybody would say that gas this week or wages. Unfortunately,
30 cents more.
I love groceries, as you can tell, and they have gone up extraordinary as well. So everything in our world has gone up. So, and I hear you. It is good to check, and it's good to keep everybody on their toes 100%.
Councilor Stevens?
Because this is within the $75,000 limit that we have set in our purchasing policy, do you need a motion or just?
This is exclusive. You guys have given us the authorization to proceed with this to $6,000. This is just information.
So
I'll give you the motion to receive, Brent.
Hey, I just would, I do know I did vote against that motion on this. I just wanted to clarify that. It is because we're looking at an overall water strategy where we're going to be possibly bidding out a bunch of different lines, and felt that maybe we could have got a little bit better price. This is not saying this is a bad price, but that was the reason why, and at that point I'd voted against it. Okay, we got a receipt for information. I'll call the question. All in favor? Are you in favor of this, Councillor Grover?
What's that?
We're just receiving for.
Receiving information, okay.
That's carried. Okay, now we have Krista into the room, so we can go back to 7.6. Do we have time to review the budget in 20 minutes?
About 20 minutes.
Yeah. Because you've done it through public consultation. The public's had a chance to see it. You've had a chance to see it. Chris, if you have too much more to add.
Request for decision, reapproval of the 2024 budget. Krista.
Thank you, Reed. So what you see before you today is the budget we have presented in the public budget presentation that we did back at the start of January. We are presenting a balanced budget. So we are sitting with a profit of $7,307 at the end of the day. This budget has everything that we discussed during council that we've gone through. No changes have been done. We will have a few changes in the revised budget process that we'll do in May when we set the tax rate. But we are just looking for council to approve this budget so we can carry on operating for 2024 with getting our capital and operations underway.
Thank you, Krista. Questions or concerns? Okay. We have a motion out there. Councillor McKay.
I'll make the motion to approve it. Yes, yes.
Ask the question to Councillor Gender.
Just looking on the part of tax cancellations. Just we're wondering who that's referring to.
So are you looking at the budget line?
Yes. Bad debts.
Debts. So we end up facing a lot of, in 2023, we had significant tax calculations. We continue to work on collections. We did have a recovery of them in 2022 on some of them, but we do have a recognizing some of them that we do have to write off with taxes. And it tends to be oil companies. Sharon is in the process of working with agreements with our lawyers for repayment terms, but that's the majority of them.
Point that I just wanted to make there, I just wanted to let people know that, okay, we make a budget, so here's another $500,000 that we are short. So where do you dig it up from?
It's always a challenge trying to make up when we have those tax shortfalls. In some of those cases, we do have to pull from general reserves if it comes to that. We've been fortunate that we've been able to cover those off and tightened our belts in other areas, but it is a concern when we do have significant tax defaults from oil companies.
And earlier today, we went through the PERC and DIRC program, and you know, that does show us how we've recovered some of those lost taxes, and every other one of those topics would come up at a council meeting before taxes were written off. So
Absolutely.
On the rural aggregate, the $98,000, is that what is due or has been paid?
Actually, so the rural aggregate levy, 98,000 is what has been billed to date. We still may have some of those within our receivables collection, and I know that we would just because of the nature of those went out in start of January for the rest of 2023, the fourth quarter. And so we recognize what we actually bill. That's how we have to recognize it for accounting purposes.
I just asked the question, being that it was kind of a hot topic today that was discussed on where it's everything been sitting.
And just as a comment also on that, we did increase the budget in 2024, and it's one area that we can always look at, increasing the budget for revenue wise, but we do recognize that we never know how much we're going to be collecting from aggregate levy or how much we're going to be charging, pardon me.
It is surprising, like you look at that, say damn near $100,000 of what we can put back into the roads because of something like that. Thank you, Krista.
any other questions? We have a motion on the table. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Krista. Guess we can, maybe, can we jump to 9.1 then?
We would prefer that, please. Thank you. Yeah, it would be perfect. I was going to ask for it, so I'm very happy you offered.
Memo, County of Stettler shop costing rates, 116 of our package.
Thank you, Council. So a couple of weeks ago, I did meet with council. And this is something that administration and corporate services have been working on and looking at what our rate is for charging out for shop. So in the past, we've charged out $50 to $65 depending on departments that we do work for on mechanic wise within the shop. And we went and did a full analysis on it. We added in employees' wages, shop wages, building maintenance, repairs, janitorial staff, any costs that are associated into that rate that we felt was fair. When we did the calculations, we factored in the rate would be at closer to $110 per hour, which we feel is more accurate in today's economy. So we're proposing that we change our shop rate, especially where this would impact is outside entities, and that would be County of Stettler supports the district ambulance as well as the Stettler Waste Management and Fire Departments. And so we would be changing that rate from $65 to $110. And so we're just more or less informing that we're doing our math. We want to make sure that the County of Stettler is recovering our costs to those entities, and that we are covering the costs that are associated with doing the work on the pieces of equipment.
Krista, I have a question on that though too, from a mechanical basis and also welding, like you got portable trucks. Did we look at those rates also too in correspondence, or would it end up, our portable could end up costing us less than what our mobile
In
unit?
regards to like the welding rates are you talking?
Your mechanic, we have a mobile mechanic truck.
Yes.
And if it got called out to a fire truck broke down on the side of the road, or what, would those rates be affected also?
Those rates are going to be affected as well. We're just in the process of fine tuning the rest of our project costing, and that's going to be included in the project costing that we do. So we'll be making sure that if there is a fire truck that breaks down on the side of the road or an ambulance, that those rates are going to be reflecting cost recovery for our employees.
So back to Andrew, what do we need on this? A receipt for information or?
Yeah, this one I think we would just do as a receipt for information. This is typically something that's set internally through the CIO and finance, or corporate services, I should say. Yeah, the factor, you know, once it starts to affect the fee bylaw, and that's where some of that project costing that Chris was talking about, that's when council needs to touch it. But for this one, this is all in mostly internal or non-arm's type charges.
So you're gonna start right away with this your $110 thing, or you're gonna wait till this budget that we made goes around?
We'll be putting that effective February 1st, 2024. So we'll be making this as of now.
We'll give you a motion to receive for information.
All the question, all in favor? That's carried.
Thank you, council.
You know, finance is way shorter than corporate services.
Telling me.
Was that the short version that we got?
It is Be Kind Day, I must remind you.
As we move on.
You know you weren't getting away with that there.
To go to now, reports.
I think we could do the fire bylaw first.
Hey, we go to section 10, 10.1.
Yeah, but I will take you to page 130. I see we had a little transcription error. We're flipped backwards between the fire bylaw and the land use bylaw on your agenda. The pages are just reversed.
Also, it's 130 versus 117.
Yeah, I noticed that. So to page 130 for the fire bylaw.
So 10.1 bylaw 1706, 2.3 fire protection bylaw for third reading.
So this you guys saw a month ago, and we're able to give quite extensive feedback. That feedback has all been incorporated. So the changes from the second reading, there were 4 changes that council asked to be brought forward. Firstly is the second and third offense penalties. going from 200 and 500 respectively to 500 and 1,000. Requiring fireworks permits only for high hazard fireworks, not the consumer type that you might pick up at, the fast gas kind of thing. We clarified in the bylaw that applicants do require the permission of a landowner. It's always been on the conditions of the permit, but for greater clarity, we've put it in the bylaw. And then clarifying that height restrictions on fireplaces or fire pits outside only apply to the opening for solid materials. So that was when you talk about a chimney, which is kind of elevated and then has a big chimney on it, we didn't want to exclude those because that's just an exhaust, right? It's not actually a public safety issue. Yeah, that basically sums up.
Councilor Gender?
Go for a third reading, please.
So, just at the very beginning, the 7.2, is it? I think where we made the change of fire pits. No, it was when you were talking at the very beginning.
7, fire pit means an outdoor.
Yeah, the definition.
Yeah, so 2.7, so that chimney, we said instead of the top of the pit, we just said the top of the opening for solid fuel. And that's what differentiates between what we care about versus what's safe.
Okay. And no, I'm sorry, I apologize. It's on 130 and under the general. Secondly, in section 7.2, prohibiting the lighting of an outdoor fire structure, fire pits, and incinerators in a hamlet. So when we do that, are we stopping people from having a fire in their backyard in a hamlet? I'm hoping we're not confusing people with that statement.
No, because outdoor fires, structure fires, it says fire pit fires in there. Sorry, that's just an error in the report. Fire pit fires are not restricted in hamlets under this proposal.
That would be.
Yeah, it's actually, if we actually look at the.
Well, that's why I was confused because it was.
I apologize. That's just probably a copy and paste that went wrong.
So it should be 7.2, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So we just say outdoor fire, structure fire, incinerator fire.
Fair enough. So that doesn't make up and part of the bylaws.
No, not the bylaw property.
Should be corrected. I was just making sure because
It's already correct in the bylaw. It's just the report that had that extra bit in it.
It's my question. Okay.
Yes, no, campfires, we have no intent on eliminating campfires from your backyard nursing kind of thing. Just don't want you burning garbage in a burn barrel.
Any other questions on that? We have a motion for third reading on the table. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Now, where do you want to drive us?
Now we've basically just got reports and then
We'll go to 11 to the Chief Administrative Officer's report, page 137 of our package. Lots of time to review. Bring any questions forward. Is there any other questions? Councilor Stillberg?
I'll move the Chief Administrator's report.
Seeing no questions, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that would be carried. Financial reports. 11.2.1 accounts payable register, January 31st, 2024, and 11.2.2 bank reconciliation, December 31st, 2023. And that's from 168 to 176. Any questions on that? We'd had some questions go into finance and they were answered, so. Okay. I can have Councilor Gender. You move the reports. Call the question, all in favor? And that would be carried. Councilor fee sheets, page 177 of the package. Questions on that? Councilor Gender?
I guess when it's going down to Lethbridge, I've seen one stay for 3 days, I've seen 3.5, I've seen 4. Have we all gone down the same?
Closer to your microphone, Counselor, please.
In the report so far, I've seen one go for 3 days. No,
I didn't put in for coming
3.5,
home.
For 4, are we gonna be consistent?
I thought it was after the cutoff. I didn't even put it in there. I thought it was,
So for myself and Les, we drove down the first day. I mean, that's it was a full day of driving, and then registration at the end of that evening was full. And then we stayed for the 2 days of the conference and then drove back the next day. That turned out to be a 4-day. That's what we wrote it up as.
Okay, that's what it is.
So was there, who was less?
I guess we didn't come home. Go ahead, Michelle.
It's, like I look at Dave's, he's got 3 days now.
I forgot to put in for coming home, sorry.
You're still in Lethbridge.
I got the mileages right, I think.
okay, well, that could be adjusted then and for less.
Oh,
Have yours in yet, Councillor Stevens?
I am 100% accuracy.
You're innocent.
When I didn't go,
You got yours right. then.
yeah, mine is right.
That is the only problem with being so far away. That there is a lot of travel time in that, so.
Right? It's better than Grand Prairie.
True that.
I'll be putting that next day, that last day. I just,
Justin, when they say south,
But the one thing the only question I had that was brought up with that is that it did go past our reporting date, eh?
It should have been this month.
oh,
That's my only question on that, so just,
I do too.
because I was one of the ones that wanted to go month by month before, so I'm just.
Are you calling yourself out?
Put them all down.
Full month, but by full month, but I got shot down on that.
I'm gonna put them in for a full month, and if I have to take them off, I'm gonna take them. I guess I don't need that day.
Hey, any other questions on the reports?
Promoting gender.
You'll move the reports?
I just woke up, so
You'll accept them? Yeah, sorry for, don't admit that you were sleeping over there. All in favor? That would be carried. Council committee reports, 11.4, we've got Stettler Public Library, Council Stolberg, Buffalo Lake Management Team, Councillor Stevens, Stettler Town and Country Museum, Councillor Stevens. And are we missing any that wanted to be verbal? Or is there any questions, any updates?
I have no additional information on mine, but we do seem to be a little bit erratic on when reports do come in.
So, which, if we're on committees, we're to do a report, and
Mr. Chairman, I was just looking at that. There's nothing that I could have reported on. Unfortunately, I was in union negotiations, and then our audited financial statements, and then the ASB conference. So I was just making sure that I didn't miss anything. Mr. Stolberg is good at making sure that and so is Mr. Grover. So I'm good on this one. So this is the one time that I have not
I
missed.
did miss one report, but I was gonna put it in there.
And then there was no FCSS meeting in January with Shelley.
there's no doctor recruitment.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right, Mr. Stevens, so we should try. And if I can just take the 2 minutes here is, when you are on a board, if you want support for that board, you need to let all the other counselors know what's going on. Because if you come to this table and I have not seen a report for 6 months, and then you make a certain request, I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to be skeptical. But if you come and if I basically know everything that's going on within reason, it's more like, okay, I saw this coming. I knew that this was going to happen, and that's where it has to be. So please, gentlemen, try and get those reports.
And what I would like almost for us to have on our bylaw, or on our reports template, is each committee that should be reporting on a monthly basis. And then, like, for instance, for doctor recruiting or FCSS, it's no meeting held in January.
That's maybe not a bad idea, actually, so that it then, it's kind of it does give you a little bit of us, council, a little bit of a check and balance, you know.
So are you thinking that the agenda should by default have every committee listed?
Have every committee list, and if there wasn't a meeting, it stated no meeting, so there should be no report expected, but if there was a meeting, then it's up to us as councilors to explain why we didn't put a report in.
That's a very good way of doing it.
And you can have the meeting and the councilor responsible for the report. And then that way it is a reminder too. Good morning. So our council reports, can I get somebody to move the ones that we did have? Councilor Nyberg? I'll call the question, all in favor? And that'd be carried. We've got one of our next delegation here, but so we'll carry on to consent agenda items.
There are a couple in here that probably warrant a bit of discussion, specifically 12.2, 12.3, and 12.8.
So we'll add them to committee of the whole as a suggestion.
Yeah, if that's where yeah, however you'd like to deal with it, if you want to give any guidance now, you can. Otherwise, we could just bring it forward for committee level of detail.
I would like to speak on a couple of these. Do we want to go in order, or
Just hit us with what you got.
well, the 12.3, the tax break request, I'd like to speak to that one. We've went back and forth for over a year about our tax incentive policy. And I'm getting very reluctant, not to speak about this not having merit, this request. I'm getting very reluctant to choose one-offs prior to getting this incentive policy in place. I would really like to have this boilerplate, here's the criteria, be able to advertise it, and take away this notion that we're picking winners. And I really like that blanket policy to be in place. And if this one met the criteria and we brought them in a couple months from now when the policy was in place, I'd be open to that. But I'd kind of like to defer this one until we have that policy in place. And the second point about this policy is they reference the town. In our committee of the whole and some of our past discussions on this incentive policy, we wanted to, I guess, protect from phased or perpetual renovations where they're on a non-stop tax break in perpetuity just by doing small renovations here and there. Our approach was sort of, our first idea was going with we'll do it initially, but not for future phases. The town took another approach that we could look at, it's open for discussion, is that any future tax breaks would only be on the improved value, not on the base. So that's something we could look at, but at this point, I would like to defer this one until we have that policy in place.
If we put it to a committee of the whole, that gives us some discussion too. Councilor Nyberg?
So, Mr. Chairman, I think in a longabout way, Mr. Stevens is saying that we should write a letter or have communication with Will McDonald's that we are very much will look into this, go forward, but after we have our discussion on our new tax incentive program, we will relook at it and revisit it. Is that what I'm hearing, Mr. Stevens?
I am good with writing a letter in response.
And indicating that we are in the midst of doing it, and we will definitely look at theirs. Thank you.
But the taxes are set for this year.
No, that's depending. We could make it retroactive at the time. They made a request to us, and I think that's what we can do, go forward.
I don't know whether it was, or anybody.
No, but that is, it can be retroactive.
Yeah.
Okay.
that's a discussion when we have that discussion.
Point out the risk to anyone making an improvement this year. So in Old McDonald's case, they're looking at constructing something this season. They wouldn't even see that on their taxes until next year anyways. So they wouldn't need deferral or any sort of forgiveness on the improvement on the assessed value for a full year.
So let's give them the information.
Just one quick comment on that same topic. At the Brownlee information session that we had in Calgary, they had a piece on tax incentives, and in Brownlee's opinion, they do work. And depending on the size of the project, you can partner like regionally or provincially even on projects, depending on the size of the project, but you can coordinate this tax incentive with your neighboring municipalities and the province on large projects perhaps. And of course I agree with the Mr. Stevens's approach as well, because it's hard to approve these things when we don't have our template in front of us yet.
So we have the 3 topics that we can put back to administration to bring back to us.
What Mr. Stevens had that second.
There was request for access to county sewer lagoons.
Yeah, 12.2. They didn't specifically state this, but I got the impression that this was referencing sort of an ICF subcommittee. Was that how administration understood it?
We certainly always want to rely on our ICCs. It's just the framework we put the work into, so we might as well use it. I didn't glean anything out of the letter that would indicate that that wasn't the route they wanted to go. That seems to be the standard way we do it now.
So it's interesting that we did have a water wastewater South Shore committee at one time. I sat on it, and I think Mr. Gender sat on it, or maybe it was the other Mr. Gender. And we, I don't think we ever had once that they ever wanted to meet with us because it wasn't a topic that was of a substantial issue to them, and now it is. So I think we did have that committee in place, so I'm not opposed to doing it, but that's a go forward.
Okay, is there any other questions that are consent agenda items, or can I get a motion to accept them?
It was just going to expand a little bit if I could on 12.8, and that's in your additions package. Environment and Parks, Environment and Protected Areas now is definitely warning quite strongly about the drought we're going to see this year. The work that they discuss in their mitigation very much centers around water allocation sharing, which we're participating in. I was fortunate enough to attend a meeting last week. And again, on March 1st, we'll do a lot of drought modeling. It's very informative, but something I really think needs to be on the advocacy piece is there's really no consideration being given for livestock right now. Much of the concern is around just the big water users off the rivers, particularly in the South Saskatchewan River Basin, and that's how I got the invite to the table. But there's no livestock producers at the table. I may have been the only voice in there who said, I've lost all the sloughs in my county, and so I'm seeing more water usage when we're all talking about water conservation through the truck fills. So it's just something that potentially we need to advocate on quite strongly.
So when we were down in Lethbridge, for the guys that weren't there, we did have a presentation by RJ Segerson and the Minister of Ag, and he was very adamant that we need to, he was raising the alarms already for ag, and so it's at the provincial level. So, but I agree that it definitely needs to be.
A lot of the big water users would have been irrigation though.
Yeah, so, and they do use a lot of that water.
That water is used for livestock. It may not be reported as such, but a lot of those big ranches, they pump water to their dugouts every spring.
I'm being a little selfish because our guys aren't benefiting from that, and that's obviously where our focus is.
Well, when you say
A share resort, does that mean share for the time being, or give?
it needs
Share for the time being, they were very clear that we are talking about temporary measures. We're asking you to give up water, not rights. So.
Councilor
And so to that end, Mr. Stolberg and I, since we did get an opportunity to spend that long trip back and forth from Lethbridge, talked about the importance of water And that we, I think, have an opportunity in the county of Stettler as an economic development situation to promote. We have water. We have a lot of water allocation, and it is available to us. So I think we need to keep that on the forefront when we're looking at it. So.
Councilor Grover?
Yeah, the Red Deer River has, I said on that Red Deer River report, we have lots of allotment, we should get with the irrigation programs and, you know, make a cap off and fill dugouts, stuff like that. They're considering putting it down on it and stuff like that, and that, so they show you the same pictures. I've seen that thing now twice where the old man is reservoirs and the river's really small, and the St. Mary's dam is just about empty. But at the end of the day, they never cut the irrigation things by 30% or something like that to slow it down. They slow down their water use on that, and they are using some of the allotment from the Red Deer River, but not anymore. They're not getting it. That's it. Thank you.
I just wanted to bring that to your attention in a sort of timely manner.
Thank you. To settle up on the minutes, we need to.
Motion to receive the consent agenda items for information.
Mr. Nyberg has already put that motion on the table, please.
Okay, thank you. It has went around and around a couple of minutes. Okay, call the question. All in favor? Carried. I apologize that we're not quite at 11:50, but you could tell that we had lots of conversation on this often. Our 11:50 delegation is present Stettler District Ambulance Association 2024 bursary, and Justin Stevens will go over to people. We will do an introduction at our table and then ask for introductions there also. When you go over, if you can take a mic with you too, that would be wonderful.
Michelle Hoover, Legislative Assistant.
Ernie Gender, Stettler Ward, good morning.
Paul McKay, Denali Red Willow Ward.
Larry Clark.
Dave Grower, Big Valley's counselor.
Good morning.
Les Tilburg by Morandiang.
James Nyberg, Erskine South Warden, and just to show how important this is, Justin went out and bought a new shirt for him.
Nikki Thorstensen, Communications.
Legislative Operations.
Andrew Bishop, Director of Municipal Services.
Mr. Cornelson, Director of Corporate Services.
Justin Stevens.
Linda Board, Manager of the Ambulance.
David Guba.
Kayla Holiday.
And the joke about me buying a new shirt is actually accurate. Usually my wife has to approve any clothing purchases of mine. I'm happy to be able to.
Actually, if we can invite you up to the front, in front, then the people at home can see what's going on.
You want us to move out of the way, Nikki?
No, well, you can slide apart.
Okay.
Yes.
Slide to the sides.
Thank you. A lot of work.
Thanks for coming. Thank you for having me.
I'm allowed to speak now? Perfect. So this is relatively recent. The Stettler District Ambulance has started awarding bursaries to those that are going into post-secondary in the healthcare, EMR related services. And we're happy to try and promote as much local health professionals as we can. And Mr. Guba does the hard work of going through the applications and picking a winner. And I believe we had several, and he chose a very worthy candidate. So I am happy to present this to Kayla.
So
I just wanted to say that Kayla's been accepted into to start her paramedic career as starting off as I guess a PCP. And we do hope that you do your practicums with us. So keep that in your bonnet. And we look forward to seeing you in the future and being one of us in a couple of years. Okay?
A little bit about the next round. So if anybody's watching and wants to apply.
Sure. When is the next round? I think we put out it for October last time, but we weren't really successful.
Yeah, so through the high school, we're going to keep it going on and on, keep it as a forever thing. You know, it's not just on a certain date. So anybody that's interested in applying can contact at the high school and apply. And it's a pretty simple process, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For paramedics, or is it pre-hospital care?
It's for anybody that's interested in pre-hospital care. So as a PCP, a primary care paramedic, or an advanced care primary, paramedic. So one step to the next. So we would be giving it to those that are interested in becoming one of us, and hoping to promote this. We get people that grew up in our community that want to stay in our community as practitioners. So.
Yeah, so anybody interested out there, please apply.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kaylee.
You're not allowed to keep the big one. We get in trouble for that.
Mr. Chairman, would you like a motion to recess?
We will recess for lunch. You, Linda, you folks are more than welcome to join us for lunch. Yeah, if that would suit you. Lunch will just be beside us in the next meeting rooms. Or a motion, and, do we need a motion?
Nope, you're good.
Just recess.
I said, if you need it, you got it.
And our first item of the afternoon is 7.7, request for decision. Reapproval of the Regional Master Servicing Study, page 57 of the package. Craig?
Here, Clark. So this material is kind of a housekeeping item. So the Regional Master Servicing Study was an initiative that the town and county worked on starting in 2015, extending to 2019, and then the COVID intervened kind of into 2021, 2022 as well. The intent of the study was to look at the servicing options for town and county lands, especially since the county has potential growth under the IDP around the town, and to see where there is opportunity for sharing access to servicing, and for the town to understand more about their system of what it would take to grow the town over the long term. The study was complete, or the consultant's work was done in 2019, and then recently the town adopted the plan, and the county simply just didn't follow through and finish up on that aspect, hence the housekeeping nature of this particular request before council. Any major study like this should at least get some sort of formal recognition, either yay or nay, so that we understand its status going forward. That said, the recommendation at the top of the report is very specifically worded to acknowledge the staff's recommendation is to accept and acknowledge the study. It's useful for ongoing work in the future. However, as time changes, we may be faced with different decisions. So the second part of that recommendation is to acknowledge that it's an information tool. It's not binding on our future budgetary decisions. And as we do more detailed planning, especially many years down the road, things and circumstances may have changed, and we may not have come back and updated this study. So that's why you see the very specific wording in the recommendation. With that, Reeve Clark, I'd be happy to field any questions about the study or the recommendation.
Is there any questions, Craig? Mr. Stevens?
I'll move that we accept the Regional Master Servicing Study as presented.
If there's no questions, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that would be carried. And 10.2, bylaw 1720-23, amendment to land use bylaw for first reading. Page 117 of our package. To Greg.
Thank you, Reeve Clark. So this is the theme is direct control for gravel pits. And this does relate to bylaw 1719-24, which was given first reading last month and is scheduled to come back to council for public hearing at your March council. The difference between the two bylaws is the 1719 bylaw creates the proposed direct control district that council is still contemplating. And in anticipation of council accepting and approving that change to the land use bylaw, this bylaw 1720 looks at a number of properties that were in the queue in terms of their applications were already on our desks or shortly thereafter coming in to be on our desks, and applications at various locations that would have got caught up in that change in regulation. So this one applies that district to those set properties. And what that means is if council approves the creation of the direct control district after the March 13th public hearing, we would then be able to move on to bylaw 1720 to apply that new district to the identified parcels. And then probably at that same meeting, council would be dealing with development permits for, I think up at this stage, up to 4 of the locations that are identified in this bylaw. Some of the other applications, maybe another month or so before they come through, but they're close enough for us to have included them as being in the queue or already kind of a work in progress. The properties that are covered stretch from the north end. There's a couple up around the Donald area down to the the Fen Road area, and then down south of Big Valley. It probably represents, I would guess, maybe half of the overall licensed or known operation pits that we have operating. It does include private lands, and within the list is also 3 parcels that are owned, operated by the county. So one of those is coming through for an approval as well on March 13th. So with that, Mr. Reeve Clark, it is recommended to give first reading to bylaw 1720-24 and to set March 13th, 2024 at 1 o'clock as the public hearing. And it would be right after the public hearing on 1719-24.
So just a little bit of clarification. So what if there is a new application for a new gravel pit? We would have to go through changing it because this isn't a blanket. This is pinpointing what area is. So you would take, quarter section, whatever is now being switched over to direct control district, or would we use just the acres that are being proposed to be part of the gravel pit?
So let's, after March 13th public hearing, and we've created the new direct control district, any applications that come forward at a later date, they could be dealt with on a case-by-case basis, in which case council will get two decisions to make on that gravel pit. Number one, at a rezoning level, should there be a gravel pit in that quarter section? And if council agrees that the answer is yes, then council will move on to dealing with the development permit. So the difference between this is when we're designated land, we actually have to get the landowner's consent, compared to the first bylaw 719, which is very global. It doesn't identify a specific parcel. That's a more broad-based policy change. So here, this is a collection where we have the landowner's consent for all of them, which they were in the queue, but it still took some work to do, or the county controls the land, in which case we give ourselves our consent. So that's part of that process for rezoning. It doesn't mean that in a future date, if someone has more than one parcel, we could do a similar approach to what you see here, provided we have the consent of each of the property owners involved.
Thank you. Councilor Stevens?
I received an email this morning from one of our pit operators who expressed interest in getting his pits included in this. I know it isn't part of the package. Is it possible to amend it at second reading to include some of those?
At second reading, no. So just, again, when dealing with the actual designations of land, we do pick up a couple extra procedural steps. Number one is having the written consent of the property owner that can say, I agree to that redesignation. And two is getting letters out to the adjacent landowners. That's the difference for that. In all land use bylaw amendments, we do have to make sure that we advertise the content and the public hearing. So when we get to this issue that if you kind of add on things, you can do minor adjustments after a public hearing, but adding in additional lands that weren't on the table for discussion at first reading is typically frowned upon, and does lead us open to a procedural challenge on whether or not that was fair for whichever party may have an interest in the redesignation.
Okay, the timing doesn't, based on his expiry dates of his current permits, doesn't seem like it's critical to have them immediately, but I will forward this information on to you and we can look at that, getting them added this time around.
So as I mentioned, Reeve Clark, if there's an interest by a number of properties, because there's not all the gravel pits are covered in this, and I didn't seek out all the gravel pits. But if there is kind of a group arrangement at the same time, we could do another bylaw, much like the one you see in front of you today, that addresses multiple properties, again, provided I have the consent at first reading of all those properties that are involved.
Fair enough.
Go ahead.
You did first reading? No, I was just going to ask another question.
Go ahead then, and I'll go back.
Just for clarification, the number of pits that were selected, it was totally on that they were either ready to expire or soon to expire is why, and that's why half the pits were left out, because they're not close to expiry date.
Well, it kind of goes back to the transition section that Reeve Clark I had in my previous bylaw. It'll probably take us a few years to make it until all the pits are under the new direct control. Again, if council agrees to creating the new direct control district. And some of it is because some pits have 8 years left on the remaining approval. But we even have pits out there that were never subject to a timeline, so they may have even longer. So it's kind of questionable how they will eventually move over. Maybe it'll expand beyond that 12-acre mark that we also included that would say you can't be in the agricultural district anymore. You have to switch over to direct control. So that may be the trigger that moves them. So of the group that's on my desk, I think one of them is brand new. But it was already on our desk and we're submitted before Christmas. So we're changing the regulation partway through the game, so to speak. Others are kind of a little past due that are coming due. They should have their application shortly. So they may be coming to the April council meeting. But I think 2 others, including our own application, we're also sorry, my mistake. Collins Pit is brand new, so it's kind of like the first scenario I was mentioning. And then the North Star Pit is a renewal that was scheduled. So they're going to be a little bit behind the perfect schedule because of the kind of a 2 weeks gap to get to end of February to about the mid-March decision-making point for council. But that's how we identified them. We had people that were working with us. We, the county, administration was proposing a change in regulation. So we had to make sure that they didn't get horribly caught up or frustrated or delayed.
Okay, well, thank you. That explains that. And I have a second question. So the pits that are far out from their expiry date yet, of expiry, so they could make an application to have their pit be rezoned into a direct control if at some point if they wish to be.
Reeve Clark, there could be one. It could be of their own volition. So if someone comes and they can apply to amend the land use bylaw on their land, and we'll treat that application and we have a kind of duty to process. We'll move it through. Others, it may be more tied to closer to the expiry of their permit, and they may say, "Well, I'll do that step at the same time," because that's also the time when they're updating their studies, and we'd like to see the renewal of those studies and materials at that same time frame.
Thanks.
Now I'll give you first reading. And then we'll have some discussion about it.
I will call the question. All in favor? That's carried. So, and that would be with public hearing.
And the public hearing, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Craig. Our in-camera session. Third-party issue with Housing Authority. If I can ask somebody to take us in camera. Councilor McKay.
I will do so.
All question, all in favor? Carried. Our next meeting is Wednesday, March 13th, for our regular council meeting. The next committee of the whole will be the end of this month, so adjourn
Will be next Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah.
Is it on our calendar? Okay. Mr. Chairman, I don't think Mr. Grover and I will be at the March 3rd.
We won't be at it, not at the meeting.
We will listen in to the public.
Yeah,
We're at a senior housing.
in Calgary. We still got a quorum anyhow.
Yeah.
Just so if anybody else was thinking of taking time off, we've spoke to leave first.
Okay. A motion for adjournment. Call the question, all in favor? That'd be carried.